Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right, and to avoid any lazy negativity, we make this and each and every episode here a drinking game. So anytime we say anything negative or stupid about a movie, we play this sound. So we hate that. We hate being negative and
angry
stuffy and trying to be wannabe know-it-alls. We hate those kinds of critics. We just want to have some fun, drink beer, and talk about movies. So drink. That's it.
Yep. So pour yourselves a glass and let's roundhouse this motherfucker.
Let's roundhouse this motherfucker. All right. We're going to get into our episode on Shang-Chi in a second. I just want to say really quick, if you are new to the show, thank you so much. We're going to go spoiler-free for a little bit here, maybe like 10 minutes or so. So if you haven't seen the movie, but you were curious as to know what our initial takes are, maybe you want to see it, maybe people are talking about how much fucking money it made over this weekend, despite the Delta variant ravaging this country. So John's in LA, Dave and I are in New York. We went to the movies. We saw this movie. And if you want to know if you should see it or not, stick around for 10 minutes. But first, let's go ahead and John, you want to shout our people out?
As usual, we have a beer sponsor. His name is Carlos Barroso. His handle on Instagram, if you want to give that man a follow, is Barroso Bar 2019. That is CBARROZOBAR 2019. Show him some love. He's the man. And as always, the music on this episode and every single episode is provided by the one and only, the legend, the artist, Dasein. That's Dasein. If you're digging the music, just head on over to soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist, and you will get all this music and more for free. So make sure you go over there and do that. And as always, people, we really love the likes and the comments.
Yeah.
We want to get those shares. We want you to interact with us. So please, 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 we are at The Love of Cinema Pod on every single handle, all those platforms, except for Twitter. We're just at The Love of Cinema. Please come at us. We will get back to you, and we want to interact. So tell us what your movies are. Tell us what you've been looking at. Tell us what you've been watching. Any great movies, any fun, terrible movies, anything we should discuss. Let us know, and we'll probably make it happen. That's a true fucking story.
Yeah, we actually got our first organic request on the film request form this week. Someone found the link tree and requested a film from the 40s. So I think we're going to be going a little bit back in time sometime soon.
Oh my
Let's
God.
do it, man.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
All right. We want to get to the episode quickly, but for anybody who is following us or subscribes to us, this is Labor Day Monday, 2021. As I said before, Dave and I are in New York City. Dave decided to move the weekend of Hurricane Ida, in which New York City, the former record for rainfall was essentially doubled in a single day. It was really, really wild, and it happened so fast. Dave moved, but we have the show up and running. So I just want to say, on behalf of everybody, if there's any audio stuff, this is an exception for us. Again, John's in California. It's a crazy time here. Dave, how are you doing? How's the setup?
You're going to hear an echo from me because I'm basically in an empty room because we had basically the furniture was not turning up in a hurricane. So I'm set up on a tiny little table. I've got everything good here. I can still buzz you fucks if you misbehave. We're all good.
We're
all
good.
It's so nice. It's so nice of you to go to the movies too. And I think this is fun. I don't know if you knew this, but it's not great to get Wi-Fi installed during a hurricane. So Dave got his Wi-Fi installed today instead.
Yeah.
So it's running great. Those fiber optic cables are great. Thanks for going to the movies. John, you're not on fire. You're doing okay in California?
I'm doing okay, man. We've had some hazy days. There's definitely some smoke in the air every now and then, but it's not super palpable down in the city.
We didn't ask about the cast parties.
We're doing okay. Oh yeah, excuse me. No.
Awesome.
No, we're doing okay. How are you guys? Are you guys okay? Those images were fucking terrifying.
They were.
I came up for air from grad school a few times and just saw some Twitter images and some footage, and it was like a fucking horror story over there. You guys okay?
It was funny because we just got like the boxes loaded in when it started to downpour, and I was like, you know what, we've done at least part of the move. Let's celebrate. We'll go out to dinner, and we went where we're going to go to the bar where we got married a couple of years ago, and we took the umbrella outside. And we got about 100 feet up the road, and it's like, this is a terrible, terrible mistake.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was bad. Yeah, transportation
ankle
was bad.
deep water on the sidewalk. It was
Yeah.
It was pretty intense.
I was riding my bike home from the gym, and in that 10 minutes, it went from 0 to honestly 100. Like, seriously, I was riding the bike with nothing. And then by the time I got home, I was sprinting into my building from the bike rack around the corner. And as I said, I think the record for rainfall in a single hour was 1.9, and it was over 3. So literally, like,
Oh my God.
record smashed. Basement apartments flooded. It was really crazy. But anyway,
we're good.
People have been watching the news. I just want everybody to know, in case there's any kind of audio snafu, that is why. Thank you so much. Dave is a tech for a living, so we promise we pride ourselves on our audio. I can speak for Dave on that. But let's get into the movie.
Yeah.
We all did it. This movie made a ton of money, as we just talked about. This is Shang-Chi.
They are blown away by this.
Dave, I know you've been going crazy. Do you want to do the setup on this one, since you are our resident Marvel expert?
you go right ahead. Go right ahead.
All right.
This is actually one of the characters I know the least about.
Right, and that's kind of the prevailing thought among a lot of people. So this is a Marvel entry. I think a lot of people, when they saw the Marvel logo upon watching this trailer for the first time in theaters, I think I saw this for Fast 9 was the first time that I saw this trailer. And when the Marvel logo came up, I was like, what? I just had no idea. This is directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who did movies like Short Term 12 and Just Mercy. So this is certainly his big, huge action movie. A couple of writers, and yes, of course, it has that Marvel tag. This movie is based on the comics, Shang-Chi, and this is the Legend of the Ten Rings. So the brief synopsis here on, great burping already, on IMDb is Shang-Chi. It's great. Oh my God. There's the buzzer. The brief synopsis here is Shang-Chi, the master of unarmed, weaponry-based kung fu, is forced to confront his past after being drawn into the Ten Rings organization. Very, very, very brief. Essentially, he is the heir to this legendary, I guess they can live for, his dad can live for thousands of years when he has the rings, but he is the son. And
that's the end of our spoiler-free episode. So
that's it, right?
Yeah.
No,
we'll get a little bit more out. We'll get some thoughts out before we start.
We'll go through some plot a little bit more. But the cast here, Simu Liu, who's been working his butt off for a while. I just never seen him really, at least not recognizably. Awkwafina plays his best friend, a little comedic sidekick. She does a nice job. And then you have legends. Like you have Tony Leung, who's a Hong Kong actor, and then of course Michelle Yeoh, who's the Mongolian-born Hong Kong legend who was in Jackie Chan movies, Bond movies, and we did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon recently, so another wuxia film, which this has some origins in, and then a couple other newcomers as well. And I think that's it for the setup. We'll get into some more plot, but again, this movie made a ton of money. A lot of people were very, very excited about this. It is an origin story, but it's not as closely rooted into the mythology of all the others.
You want to know how much money this movie made? This movie made so much fucking money that Sony, who was pushing Venom back to the end of October, possibly November, is now releasing Venom on the October 1st.
Oh, wow. They moved just... Wait, this is the first time a film's moved up in a while.
This just happened. Yeah, it just happened today. They've pushed the date forward because of what this movie did over the weekend.
Oh my God.
So, apparently it broke the 2019 record.
Yeah. Since when when Quiet Place 2 came out and they were like, look, big movies are back. And it was like, yeah, it made like half as much as the first one, but all right, cool. And this movie like legitimately is setting Labor Day records. Like it's pretty fucking cool. Initial takeaways. Let's do it. The people want to know if they should go see this movie if they haven't, or if they have seen this movie, did you feel the same? So let's go. Let's dive into it. Initial takeaways. What did you think?
You know what? I'm going to pimp you out, Dave, just because I can tell by the fucking shit-eating grins on all three of our faces that some viewers might not be able to see. I think we all really enjoyed this and had a great time in the movie theater. Dave,
you know what?
Talk to me, dude. What was it like?
This is just, it's a full package. It's funny. It's fun. The fight choreography is fucking flawless. It's beautifully shot. They do some things with the camera that I am going to be watching the special features to have a look at how the fuck they did it. Because it, like, there's certain moves and stuff that the camera's almost like a character in the fight scene. It's really well done.
From the big to the small.
But it's very well balanced. It's just like I was going in and I was like, I don't know what to expect from this. I don't know the character too well. And I just sat there and went for a ride. And I'll tell you, because me and Jeff saw this in, I don't know how you saw it, but me and Jeff saw this in two very different theaters. Because I went to the full fucking IMAX screening again of this. And I was, in it. Because it was enormous. It was great.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jeff, what format did you see it in?
I saw it just in a regular theater. I saw it in a really small, local, $6 theater.
Yeah, I saw it in a smaller digital screening as well, and of course, for anyone who is concerned, try to weigh out your options. I have a AMC A list. Shout out to AMC if you want to give us a little sponsorship action. So I was
Sure.
able to look
That's what
around
they're
in
looking
Los
for.
Angeles and find some theaters that weren't too heavily crowded, and I found one that was just a regular digital theater. Dave, I can't tell you the last time I was very disciplined about going to see the big movies in the larger formats, and I always enjoyed doing that so much. I haven't done this in a long time, seeing it in a regular digital format, and I still had a wonderful time. I would love to see it in Dolby or
Right.
Prime or IMAX, but I had a wonderful time. And you're right, man. I think my biggest takeaway, and I'll pass the buck after this, because my only real statement that I want to
Pass
make
the
from the
buck.
beginning is that
Can you pass it my way. Pass that fuck over here.
I am
Sorry.
gonna pass it to you after this. I feel like, when was the last time? Because I'm not super steeped in comic book lore, and certainly not in the characters and the literature the way some people are who are huge Marvel fans. I am a fan of the company, the studio, and these movies. I think they're so much fun, and I've never felt like I needed to know anything. But this had that extra hidden treasure because no one really knew what to expect. And it was so much fun going into a studio, producers, a director, everyone you can trust, actors, and just getting to see them flesh out something with zero expectations.
This was another.
And they crushed it.
It was another Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, they picked a team that didn't really have
Honestly,
a lot of.
For me,
Yeah.
even more than Guardians, I would say, just because I knew so many of those actors already. I did know. Don't get me wrong. I knew Awkwafina. I knew Michelle Yeoh, and I know Tony Leung. I did not know the Simu Liu.
Yeah.
Yes, I did not know him, but my goodness. So I knew these people just enough, but this still
His
just
sister is
transcended
brand new.
into something
Have
else.
a look at
She was amazing
Kim's
too.
Convenience on Netflix. It's
Okay.
he's in that.
He's in there?
Yeah.
He's in there?
Yeah.
And he's
That's
appeared. He's
how I
guest
got to
starred
know
on
him.
shows. We probably seen him as guest star and just couldn't place him.
I'm sure
His
we
sister. I mean, at least I don't know. IMDb isn't necessarily the best source for international films, I guess. But his sister has nothing on her resume, and she's incredible in the film too.
Yeah.
So
needless to say, this is really exciting. Coming off of Black Panther that was extremely successful, very original. I think we were having similar conversations about how well that movie worked. Obviously, it was set in a different country, focusing on people who do not look like a lot of the Avengers. This movie did the same thing, and it was just so refreshing. And as I've said before, it never felt indicative to me. It didn't feel like they were trying to make a point. It was just a really excellent story that starred people who come from those cultures, who look like that, and yet it still felt accessible. It still felt American and international at the same time. It was so refreshing. And Jeff, what do you think?
From what I've read, it was also very respectful of the culture. I'm not a judge of that myself because I'm not immersed in.
Yeah, but that's good to know.
But yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I admitted when we did our Black Panther episode that I was starting to experience Marvel fatigue in the. I don't want to say phases, right? Because Marvel has their phases, and I don't want to say just like post Endgame. I feel like is like a world we have to live in. Like in the post Endgame world, what is Marvel? I admitted like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I started getting the fatigue, and then Black Panther came along, and I was like, do I need this? I know this movie was supposed to come out 5 years ago, but like, did I need this now?
You mean Black Widow?
Oh fuck! Sorry. Yes,
Black Widow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Case in point. No. You're totally right, dude. You're totally right. Though we did have that conversation about Black Widow. I think you and I both resonated.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean Black
Yeah.
Panther. Although I did.
I was like, what fucking late delivered DVD did you get?
Sorry. No, Black Panther was one of my favorite Marvel movies. This was.
So.
I really didn't know what to expect, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. And I'm glad that we had seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, not just to say like the only obvious famous kung fu wuxia films, but Crouching Tiger is a lot about the romanticism and the theology and the kind of the philosophy behind it, as not so much the movements. And I think part of the reason the action sequences are so good is they're very, very, very well motivated. But then it sort of comes into that the ability, just textbook talent versus like what's the point? What's the philosophy behind it? What's the reason for fighting? And like even I'm saying that out loud and I'm like that should be cheesy, like, especially for American culture, like bringing that. And for some reason it was the opposite. It was really incredible. And I didn't know Michelle Yeoh was going to be in this, and she comes in later in the movie, and I was like, fuck Yes, let's go. I thought it was.
And you know what?
I have
It's
that
still-
reaction every time she walks on screen, to be honest.
Every time she walks on screen. And you know what my favorite thing, not my favorite, but another thing that was just so refreshing that just gave me such a clear sense of the maturity of the way they approached making this is exactly what you're talking about. This balance between motivation of the martial arts, which is essential to really good martial arts movies, I would say. They're usually my favorite ones. Not just hit 'em up, beat 'em up. Those can
the
be
best
fun
way
too.
to get an object or power or
I think
whatever.
it's the,
Yeah.
yeah. But cinematography wise and just storytelling wise, every time that they would go huge with really fun spectacle driven action scenes, they were wonderful to watch. They were sexy, they were interesting, they were surprising, unpredictable, really cool cinematography. But then they would also give it just as much effort and beauty with the really realistic fight choreography. So like when Michelle Yeoh is just practicing by herself and she just like sets up her form, it was gorgeous. And they did the contradiction between really simple coverage that was true to the way that philosophy of martial arts, motivated.
Well, yeah,
itself,
that was a combat Tai Chi style.
Such a good contradiction
that she was using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was so pretty, and the way that the fluid camera movements, I felt like they did something. You're right, Jeff. Like it's obvious that they were watching some of those movies. They had grown up with some of those movies the way we all have.
Daggers.
And the best
House
ones.
of Daggers came out.
There's
the best
homages
ones shine.
To a lot of
But
the
I
big
think they
movies.
did their own thing. I thought this was still really fresh. I thought they found a really good balance, and it was so pleasant. There was so much aesthetic that didn't feel like it was. It felt like it was always coming from character, which is hard to do in a big spectacle.
Yeah,
and I think they did it.
Yeah, let's do a little. Let's unveil a little bit more plot when we get into this. So slowly easing into that spoiler section, but nothing too crazy yet. So we see the story of his dad, Shang-Chi's father, who I guess can live for centuries. And yes, there is. It's hard to ignore the Lord of the Rings reference with the rings at the beginning. It's like 10 rings were forged, and it's like, oh yeah, is there one that rules them all or what? Sorry, end of my Lord of the Rings comparison, but anyway, yeah. But then they had one of those battles where he with his rings like walked right into the middle of a battle, and that was thousands of years ago.
Very Sauron style, yeah.
You're essentially immortal when you have these rings, and then he's looking for this ancient town, village, world, in the middle of the woods, and he's trying to find it, and there is somebody guarding the entrance who's this incredible female fighter. And during their fight, which this is the first real fight sequence we have, and calling it a fight sequence it's almost more of a dance, but with martial arts, and it is stunning.
That is a very famous style as well. That happens in a lot of Asian film.
Beautiful. He ends up falling in love with her. He decides to put the rings down because he wants to live a normal life with her and age, and essentially, put his life in the hands of his family instead of himself and his quest for power. So he puts the rings down, has a son and a daughter, and then pretty quickly, we don't know what happens. They actually play with time. They go back and forth and kind of tease us with the origin story throughout the whole film. But it turns out that Shang-Chi has ended up in San Francisco, which is a pretty cool city for movies like this, with hills and buses, etc. Also, based after Fast and the Furious 9, never park your car in any of these movies. How many cars get destroyed on the side?
Yeah. If you're in San Francisco, just pay for parking.
Yeah. So here's what's really cool and accessible about this story, and this is really fucking hard to pull off, is this beautiful epic fantasy, which essentially is what Wuchi titles are, like romanticized. It turns into Shang-Chi is a valet, and his best friend is Awkwafina, who's also a valet, and they don't really love their lives, and it's just them dicking around, going to karaoke and having fun until somebody comes for a pendant that his mom has left, and a guy with what do they call his arm? A guy with
his razor claw
sword
coming out of his arm, and a bunch of guys approach him in a bus, and they try to take the pendant, and it turns out he's fucking awesome at martial arts, and Awkwafina, who's his best friend, had no fucking idea.
See, that got me as well, because I was so into it. I was like, wait a minute, did he just is this just coming out of nowhere? And then you get more backstory. They did it really, really well, because you're sitting there and you're like, what the fuck? Did they just jump completely into this? Awesome. And then he explains that he's actually living a fucking lie, and it's but that got me real good.
That was great. And that whole sequence where you're trying to figure out what's going on during the sequence, but it was still very clear. What the action was very clear.
We're going to slip into spoilers, so I'm turning on the alert.
Yeah, you turn on the alert.
That guy with the phone. That guy with the phone recording
it,
yeah. So funny.
Hey guys, it's coming at you live from the
it's
bus.
Your boy.
He was what was he in? He was in one of the other Marvel films as well, filming stuff.
Oh, that makes
sense. So that's a recurring character. Yeah.
But anyway, he kind of does the whole like, "Hey, Awkwafina, I'm so sorry. Yeah, by the way, I was trained to be this, whatever, yada yada yada. I have to go find my sister."
My dad's a millennia years old.
This might be a lot to dump on you. Sorry.
Yeah. So they go. I forgot to write it down. Where was it? Where is the sister? What city was she living in?
It was somewhere in Wuhan, wasn't it? Wasn't it in one of the? I feel like they referred to going back to Wuhan, somewhere in China, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. We're gonna.
I thought it was in that region. I don't know if I caught the exact name of that city.
It's a bold choice.
They definitely said it's bold. They definitely said it, and we have to remember it. We saw this in the theaters. We do not have screeners, so if anybody wants to figure out how to get a screener,
give us a break here.
And his sister's running an underground fighting ring. And then they get breached, and yada yada yada. Eventually, the father kind of becomes the villain of the story because he's trying to break into this historic town that the mom is from, that she was guarding, right, in their opening scene. And we find out why. We'll get to the end, the why he's trying to break into this historic town, but he's definitely not doing it for good reasons, or at least not for reasons that are good to the world. So that's the plot. Where should we go from here? Any other directions you guys want to head with our conversation?
I just want to keep. I mean, I'm gonna get a gush alarm if I do it, but like the fight choreography in this, like everybody really had their best day at work on this. Like it's like there's different. Like there's different combat styles, but there's also different camera styles depending on the fight. Like the camera mimics the style of fighting they're using almost, and it was really, really beautiful to watch.
Dynamic as well because of that. It never felt like because I'm not gonna lie, there were a few moments where I was like, well, they're fighting a lot in this movie. But at the same moment I had that thought, like a microsecond later I said, but why am I not minding? Why am I not feeling like it's just a bunch of fight scenes? And it's because of those dynamic different styles. It was just beautiful to look at and interesting to watch, and the settings of all the fighting was so magnificent. But it was because in between all these many, many, many awesome fight scenes, you have a director and obviously producers, I'm sure, but they hired him. This guy has worked on really grounded drama for most of his career. Short Term 12 is one of my favorite independent films from the past 10 or 15 years. And there were so many examples in this movie, Shang-Chi, where he had set up the emotional circumstances so well that the payoffs, information, but also the payoffs came in fight scenes, which was such a unique, and that's a tactic that's been used before, but he did it with such a maturity. It just seemed like every time I was hoping that more information was going to be provided, and then there was going to be enough weight given to the emotional payoff. He never let me down, building all the way. And I'm gonna throw a spoiler out there. I'm gonna try not to say too many details. The ending sequence with when they're riding on this thing. I guess we shouldn't talk about that.
Giant mystical creature. We're in full spoiler alert now. We're 25 minutes in, so stop, go watch this movie, and come back.
I think my best example of this, because they had really successful examples leading up to this, but if you don't nail the final one, it's all fucking over for me. As Jeff said, the dad kind of becomes this villain character. So obviously it's going to be this tale of the children having to destroy the father to save him, to save themselves, to save the world, to redeem. They have to take, what's that quote? A blood oath is paid in blood, or a blood debt must be paid in blood.
Yeah.
So after Shang-Chi finally does that and defeats his father, which is the first part of the giant sequence where they have to, deal with the consequences of his father unleashing this huge terror. You're kind of waiting. You've been building to this giant moment the entire movie. This happens. He has to very quickly get on board with his sister on this giant dragon that they're flying around on, which is this amazing spectacle. And in that moment, they made sure that they edited together enough back and forth so that Shang-Chi and his sister look at each other, look at their father's body on the ground, look back at each other, and he stays with them long enough. It's not just information so that the audience knows that the sister can clock the fact that, okay, you killed dad, good, let's go take care of the rest of the problem. They dealt with it in that moment and gave it enough weight so that you also had a chance as an audience member to process, because they both know what's the terrible thing that just had to happen.
There was this half second as well where there's this half second there in that look where you're like, is this going to go sideways? Like, is there going to be a fight between these two now because he's just killed dad? And like, it made you think, and there was time enough for you to think.
Just
the pacing
they made
wasn't
room for
affected
the
at all.
yes.
Yeah.
They made room for the complication that there might be a problem, and that happened throughout this story. There were so many moments where I felt like they didn't rush the emotional things, and I don't know if he was, how much somebody has to fight for that in an editing room and around a production table when you're storyboarding these massive sequences. But typically, for people who don't know this, most of these gigantic fight sequences are done with pre-visualization, where you're going to be basically doing a gentle animated render of exactly what this giant sequence is going to look like. That means that as storytellers, they're also trying to figure out where are the emotional moments coming from. So they weren't just thinking about fighting. They built the fighting around the emotional journeys. And that's why I felt like it succeeded every time.
Were there previous lectures at college this week?
No, I mean, I just can't stop. I couldn't stop thinking about it because typically when you think about previs or really ridiculous storyboarded sequences, you don't think about the emotional moments. You think about the cuts for the action. But for these, I just couldn't stop thinking about how they clearly made room for them. So anyway, I wanted to go off on that, but go back to what you're talking about cinematography wise, because my goodness, every single setting in this movie felt different because of the way they filmed the emotional moments and the fighting.
I'm gonna be watching this for years, trying to figure out and basically learn from what they did in this. It's some of the most amazing cinematography I've seen recently. Like as far as filming stunt fighting and filming action, and there's nothing standard about this at all. Every shot is carefully crafted, like you were saying, and it's not. Sometimes it is a case where they give you the pacing, and sometimes they really ramp it up and they shake the shit out of that camera, but you don't mind. Like at one point, the camera's almost a part of the fight.
Yeah, and I think that let's give credit where it's due. When I was watching this, Dave, I'm trying my hardest, man. I'm starting to try to put on my cinematographer hat and just start to think a little bit more about who are the signature kind of things. Because so many cinematographers try to, remain invisible in a certain extent. But I was not surprised when I saw that Bill Pope filmed this. He's a cinematographer who did the Matrix movies, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, those original ones. He's, so he is no stranger to this really interesting fight choreography.
I had the same reaction you did. I looked it up afterwards and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is someone who comes in and goes, all right, how can we film this? How about we film it like that? No, how about we film it like this? And it's and it's something so ridiculous they have to go away and build technology to do. And
this director's been working, but not at this level. So you would almost assume that if you're going to take an indie director, which is what Cretin is, you better pair him with a cinematographer that knows his shit.
But also, the director's presentation he would have had to make to get this,
Yeah. What did anybody find when they filmed this? Because the timing is interesting. Like you would think they would film it in 2020, but then that was the pandemic. Like, did they film this pre-pandemic? Did they do reshoots? I'm very curious about the filming schedule.
Yeah, that I'm not sure of.
Yeah, this is still
I read
fresh.
that Cretin was hired at the beginning of 2019, or at least that the project was greenlit in 2019. So I think they were doing a lot of pre-production throughout that year, and then they filmed a good amount in Australia.
Oh yeah.
In 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
And at one point he was quarantined, the director, and they had to shut down production for a few weeks while him and others had to go into quarantine. So they were definitely making this movie, or at least part of this movie, in production.
I mean, they had time
during the fucking pandemic.
Australia didn't really fuck itself until 2021.
Right.
Yeah, except Tom Hanks got it in Australia, so everybody assumed it was bad because Tom Hanks of all countries.
Or did he bring it to Australia?
So let's talk. I want to talk about the training montage because that is so fun, and we're doing Karate Kid next week, which is such a dumb comparison between these two movies that was so not intentional. I promised everybody, but
why are we doing the Karate Kid, Jeff?
because I watched it last week thinking we were doing it last week. But there's a training montage, which is essentially, I'm so sorry to say, maybe it's just that it's on my mind. It's the Cobra Kai mentality of like, punch first, go fuck everybody else. So when the mom passes away of these two kids, I think there's a line in here that Awkwafina says. Awkwafina, by the way, shout out. You know,
So yeah.
some this role can be tricky. She had a very similar role in Crazy Rich Asians. She did really nice job, Awkwafina. Really funny, but also not.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like Judd Apatow funny, where you just
she
give
had
a
a
million
moment.
takes and they choose one. It really felt well crafted. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, with this boy's 6, his mom passes away, and we find that out throughout the course of the movie. So from age 7 to 14, he just is training 7 days a week. He's literally punching wood. You get like early arthritis when you just punch a wooden pole for 7 years. Like I don't know.
I'd
what
be more
happened.
concerned about the sticks up the ribs.
Oh yeah, yeah. But
That's gonna
you had to
leave a
endure
fucking
people
mark.
just smacking the shit out of him.
Yeah.
He's basically a trained assassin, which very similar to Black Widow, right? Where the parents, or at least in Black Widow, I guess it's a little different, but the parents or the parental figures sign their kids away for a life of being a mercenary or an assassin. What'd you think of that training montage? I thought it was pretty fucking cool, especially with the daughter being in like her own room training with the rope thing. It was fucking awesome.
Now I have to ask, having seen that training montage, how many after credit scenes did you see?
Oh no, I just saw one. Were there more? Everybody laughed at my.
No, there's a second one.
God damn these movies!
There's one,
And that
the
training montage becomes relevant, very, very relevant.
Fuck.
And there are two typical ones, right? There's the one after the animated
usually one.
credits.
There's usually it's usually a
there's
mid
one
credit
at
and
the
then an end credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this case, there was a mid one that set up the continuing, and then a second one that set up a sequel.
So my favorite thing about that montage was it was executed so well that it gave me the luxury of just ingesting that as really wonderful, beautiful, aesthetic storytelling and information. But my favorite part about it was what you mentioned earlier, Jeff. What we were all saying, like when he's on the bus and he just starts kicking ass, and you're like, whoa. Is he like learning this as he goes? Does he have a superpower inside him? I love that they very realistically, in a story that is so far removed from realism for the latter half of it, when it's dealing with mystical dragons and other dimensional beasts and stuff, the realistic part was necessary for me because I needed to believe that this guy was as good as they needed him to be, so that he wasn't just, oh, it's inside of me all along. They give you this right after that sequence, and you get to watch him. Yeah, for 7 years of his life, all he did was train under the best, warriors in the world. It became believable. I was like, all right, I'm ready to watch him kick a bunch of ass, and I'm ready now that I know that can fight in reality. Now I'm going to be ready to watch him transcend reality and actually get some kind of superpower or earn his right to have the rings. It was important for me.
What do you think of Trevor? Trevor's back.
Oh my God, dude.
Trevor, dude.
Oh my God. Ben Kingsley, dude. That was
Fucking
so
Sir
again, it was so refreshing. It was so funny. His humility, dude. Just coming into this role and just realizing like I'm there to be laughed at. That whole sequence about the apes acting. I still don't know how they did it. I mean, that was so funny.
He's so
funny.
stupid.
So funny.
It's so stupid.
And you take it for granted because he's so good. I mean, you take it for granted. Like that could have seemed cheesy and stupid if it wasn't handled by a master.
Well, also
actor.
the two sitting next to him that were like the perfect straight man at the time. Like you've got like Awkwafina's there, like they're dropping jokes all the way through this thing, and then he's saying this, and they're like, "Is he
stall.
real?"
Like, she doesn't have any jokes for it. She's literally I'm out of other things.
But
then,
like,
what's funny is functionally, it's my friend Eddie always says, "I'll give you one coincidence per movie." You know what I mean? And here it is. You have a guy they're in a dungeon at this point. They're locked away, and here's a guy who has a mythical creature who knows the way to this town and village, and they know a way out. So it's a little bit of a coincidence, and it's nigh on impossible for that to be pulled off without you feeling like, fuck, Marvel wrote themselves into a corner, and then they just decided to blow a hole through the wall. And apparently it was set up a long time ago.
Yes.
And it was just pulled off in such a way. I actually likened it back to when Awkwafina says in the movie, confusion is her, what does she say? The art of confusion. Where if you confuse people, the reason that they're fighting, they just forget and then they walk away, and that's like the best de-escalation tactic. The art of confusion here, where you have Ben Kingsley's character and you have the bombing that he yada yada it, but we all know what he's talking about. And then he's like, oh yeah, by the way, this person knows the way out. And all of a sudden you're in the car on the way and you're like, well, Buck, here we go. And you don't sit there and think about how that's just a device. Like he rounded that corner really well.
That he's like, his pet has no face and 2 asses and 6 legs. But it's
yeah. And they ask about that, yeah.
It's still one of the cutest things in the film.
Yeah, it is.
I did think that maybe they were going to, maybe they were supposed to escape to lead them. I thought that's what it was going to be, that the dad had set it up so that they would escape with Ben Kingsley, knowing that they would lead him to the gate or something. But you're right. It didn't bother me that wasn't the case. I let that go very easily just because, I don't know. I guess the sister had made those comments about being able to escape through the tunnels and stuff. It's
right.
Yeah.
They wrote it in pretty well.
We're endorsing the shit out of this movie, but I kind of want to see if everything was pulled off, though. There's 1 or 2 scenes where I was like, okay, this kind of feels like movie script scenes. But the part of the film that I've seen people mention as like, we love this movie, but did this, is basically right from that to the end. And then the constant exposition. I feel like every 20 minutes we took an exposition pause where we had to like wait for new information. But then the CGI at the end is brilliant. But John, you believed that it was justified emotionally and it got you, but did it get so confusing in CGI that you were just kind of like, can this end already? Because I did kind of land there at the very end, to be honest with you, with the dragons and the other dragons in the water, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? Can this just end? Because they're gonna live.
Yeah. I guess the only thing I would say to that is they could have maybe done a little bit more to set up the fact that an actual dragon is going to potentially come into play, because they had done such a good job of creating that as a metaphor for what they were channeling through the heart of this dragon, where their power comes from. And even though you could tell that like his mother actually did seem to be able to manipulate physics, like she did have quote superpowers. She's not, she wasn't like a god or anything, but she did have some kind of effect on her physical reality. I guess I was a little bit, when he was in that classic sequence where he falls down into the lake and he's sinking, and you're not sure if he's going to make it, and you're waiting for his eyes to open and his powers to come to him. I wasn't expecting a dragon to actually be ready to rise up with him. I thought they were going to, even when it started happening, there was a part of me that thought maybe this is just, in him kind of thing. It's his power and we're just seeing it and it's going to kind of dissolve into the water or something.
I went completely the other way.
I didn't mind it though. Ultimately, I was like, I guess there's a fucking dragon at the bottom of this lake. When he was down there, I was like, we're going to see a giant eye open. And I felt some Game of Thrones kind of feelings. And I was like, all right, let's get it on. They're about to fucking fight with dragons. Yeah, it didn't work for you, Joe?
He dropped into that water and I saw that dragon. I'm like, he's fucking riding that out of this water. Yeah, straight away. I was like, he's gonna do it, and it's gonna be awesome. And
for me, it was actually and I kind of bought that, even though it wasn't set up. For me, it was actually the other dragon, the one like the demon dragon.
Yeah,
that feeds off of souls. I kind of felt like they were like, oh wait, watch out, it feeds off of souls, and it's like, oh, so the end of the movie is gonna be we have to kill the dragon before it gets souls, which is something that was just mentioned like a minute ago. So like the end got a little. I'm just gonna say it's not a perfect movie, is what I think. Even though it was like so close, I feel like there were a couple things that could have made it there for me. But who knows? Maybe this is just a part of the journey.
You can buzz me for that. All right.
We'll get
and Awkwafina with the arrows.
I'll admit you there were a couple of times where like they took the like. Granted, we've only got 2 hours for this movie, so Awkwafina can shoot an arrow really fucking well automatically. And it's just a gift she had. Like there was a couple of times where it was they kind of just skipped a bit and hoped you went with them. Yeah. But I didn't mind it at all.
Yeah, like, same. Truth be told, I didn't mind.
Especially since her reaction to it was like, holy shit. Like
yeah. And then her
and the way they talk about it at the end.
And then the way
they talk about it at the end with the friends, I only have one day to learn it. So I don't know, I guess part of me at this point too, which may be good for Marvel, having started with Iron Man, which of course is not believable, but it's probably the most grounded one. The first Iron Man, starting from there, a regular person using intellect, blah, 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 and then building up to an Infinity War where we have inter-universal dimensional wars going on. My suspension of belief for this universe that they have built is so enormous now that I guess I'm not really, my my bar for what I'm going to be able to accept. They have done it so many times now that I'm never going to say like, I don't know if they justified that dragon.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say whatever.
I want to say Multiverse of Madness will put that to the fucking test.
Yeah, I can't wait
when we get to that.
And the last part of this last sequence that I really want to shout out is, so the dad Wenwu, he thinks he's hearing his wife's voice even though she's dead, and he thinks she's beyond this wall, which is essentially the afterlife, but it's really just a bunch of demons that are being trapped. I don't know, it's a little confusing, but I guess that's the mythology, and it checks
They
out.
set up
it did
that
check
story.
out.
Yeah,
they set it up well. I forgive me for going anti-vaxxers on this, thinking like when he lets the demon dragon out and the demon dragon grabs him and he goes, "Oh right, that wasn't my wife, it was a demon dragon," and the look on his face when he's like looking at his son, who, as John mentioned, basically killed him, and he's looking at his son and he goes, "Yeah, I know I fucked up. I know I fucked up. Here's the rings. You can have the rings now because I fucked up. My bad." It's I thought that was really good.
I do love I know. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge sucker for if you can pull off a really epic "What have I done?" Bridge of the River Kwai, Alec Guinness moment. Like,
yeah.
And I don't know, Jeff, if you don't mind, that's going to lead me into. You guys, I am obsessed with Tony Leung. I am just such a huge fan. I've always been a huge fan of his. He is magic on screen. This role in some other hands, if they had made him seem two-dimensional and just like a bad guy, oh my God, it just would have been so much worse. He heightened everyone around him because of the relationships that they had with him. I don't know, he was just working at such a level. He was the standout for me. I loved Awkwafina, and I loved, God damn it, help me out. What's his name? I loved the lead.
Simu Liu.
Simu.
Yeah.
Yeah, Simu Liu. I loved what they did too. It's just, you know how sometimes it's hard when you're playing the protagonist and straight people. Not that Awkwafina was the straight person, but she wasn't a total clown. They were kind of almost co-protagonists at certain moments. So you have these supporting characters like Tony Leung. And I feel like so many times you get to really see the acting and the performance come out of supporting characters in a more free way. And I felt like he just, my God, he just took this movie way up a notch for me. So at the very end, when you're finally waiting the entire time for him and his son, Shang-Chi, to have their moment where they have their final showdown, when the rings finally pass from Tony Leung's character to Simu Liu's character, it was there. And I'm sorry, but like, this is just one of those things. You can make movies that are gigantic, $200 million. We can have all the best VFX in the fucking world, and none of it would matter if you didn't believe what was happening, the emotional truth in their relationship.
Oh yeah,
and that was just all performance.
We've seen that.
It was so good. I just couldn't get over how believable they were in all of these ridiculous Chinese dragon martial arts scenarios.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, really refreshing. It was just, I loved it. I had a great time. I'm gonna rewatch this one for sure.
Yeah, me too. I mean, my wife was so pissed because I went to see it at 11:30 at night because it was the only time I could fit it into the weekend I just had, and so she didn't come with me, and I'm pretty sure she's somewhere with headphones on now because I am under orders to not mention a fucking thing about this movie because she wants to go and see it, and I'll happily sit there again.
Yeah, go again.
Yeah, go see it again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there
also,
you go,
there's
friends.
so many references.
Last thing I want to say.
Sorry, Dave. Wait, Dave. What did you say before we cut you off?
So many references in this thing. Like, you know, you got the Wong abomination
and
thing.
The future.
It's
nice.
That's what I was just gonna say. I feel like, as Jeff and I had mentioned before, if you are also someone who can suffer, sometimes suffers from Marvel fatigue, this gave me a lot of hope for some new ideas and new takes on where they're going to take this universe. I'm not saying I need to see it on every single platform and be dominated by only Marvel all the time, but as a standalone example of what they can do in this new phase, I'm really excited.
And I'm not going to lie, when we got to that first after credit scene, which I won't spoil, but when I saw who was standing there and the situation with that, I leaned out of my chair. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
well, that was a good thing.
How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Yeah,
I mean,
I know how that happened, but how did that happen? Like,
yeah.
Anyway,
I love that. All right, and who they're propping up? $250 million. It's like they're gonna keep doing it. And it's awesome. Okay, cool.
Oh yeah.
With that,
dude.
Friends, we're gonna go ahead and give some recommendations with a quick round. what you've been watching. Dave, have you watched a single thing with no internet in your house?
I have not watched a single thing with no internet in my house. I did go to a Michael Franti concert last night in up in Rosendale in New York, and they did the whole thing where they like checked the vaccinations and everybody had to show proof, and then like so everyone came in and everyone just sat there and had a really good positive night. And I only bring it up because that man has some really positive music, so I highly recommend it.
Right, John?
Yeah.
I am going to recommend. I watched The Chair.
Me too.
Series.
That's my recommendation.
There you go. Yeah, so nice and tight. I think it's 7 episodes, 23.
All right,
in the 23-minute.
Six.
Okay, 6. It was nice. I guess they're not going to make another one. I don't know if they need to. Maybe they will. I didn't feel like they had to. I feel like they said what they wanted to say. I enjoyed it. It's nice and tight. I don't know if it changed my mind or my life about any of these issues. But the characters are fun. It's a fun show to watch. It's talking about a lot of the hot topics.
They got a little too into
all
the
changes that are.
It was great. I love Sandra Oh, Chloe and I loved the first 2 episodes together, and then I kept watching, and then, I wish they didn't hang so tightly onto the one issue. I think the more they spread out,
and I wish they would have. I do kind of wish
it was good. Everybody give it a watch.
Further.
It's 2 hours of your life, and you watch the whole season.
It is a dramedy, but I wish they kind of went a little bit more to the drama. I think there were some obstacles they presented that they could have gone further with, and they could have exploded a little bit further. But
some of those comedic like
fun.
moments and fills, didn't work. Yeah. David
it's a
Morris,
good watch
Bob
though, and it's a harmless,
Jay
quick watch.
Sandra Oh, it's awesome.
Jay was great.
All right. Well, we said that at the same time. Thanks for letting me jump into your segment. And friends, we're going to do The Karate Kid in our midweek episode for our Should Have Seen That By Now, because I had never seen it before. Do you think it's crazy? What? Join our midweek episode and you'll be able to hear what we think about it. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And we will see you next time. Film fam.